Brothers Zach and Gray are getting ready for a long-awaited trip away from home. Their plan is to spend a full week with their Aunt Claire, who works at a famous dinosaur theme park. Their parents see them off at the airport, and before parting, their mother reminds Zach to keep an eye on his younger brother during the journey. Before reaching the island itself, the boys board a ferry packed with excited tourists. The boat carries them to Isla Nublar, a remote location where prehistoric creatures roam inside a massive, high-tech park. Once they arrive, they are greeted by Zara, Claire's assistant, who escorts them to their hotel. There, she hands them special VIP passes arranged by their aunt, allowing them to explore every attraction without waiting in lines. While the boys begin their adventure, Claire is busy managing the park's operations. During a meeting with investors, she explains that guests are becoming harder to impress. Ordinary dinosaurs no longer spark the same excitement, and visitors now crave something bigger, scarier, and more extreme. To meet this demand, the park scientists have engineered a brand new hybrid dinosaur known as Indominus Rex, a creature designed to surpass even the mighty T-Rex in size and power. After the meeting, Claire finally reunites with her nephews at the Innovation Center, marking their first encounter in 7 years. Inside, the space is filled with interactive displays, towering dinosaur projections, and fossil-digging activities for kids. Claire explains that Zara will supervise the boys for the day, promising to meet them later for dinner. Gray is clearly disappointed, having hoped to spend more time with his aunt. Noticing his reaction, Claire reassures him that she'll make it up to them the next day. Claire then heads to the park's control center, where every dinosaur and visitor is constantly monitored. Soon after, she meets Simon Masrani, the park's enthusiastic owner. Together, they take a helicopter ride to Paddock 11, where the Indominus Rex is being housed. During their discussion, it becomes obvious that Claire views the dinosaurs primarily as attractions, while Simon believes the park should inspire awe and remind humans of their place in nature. Inside the containment area, Claire explains that the hybrid dinosaur is exceptionally intelligent. It has already learned feeding patterns and once seriously injured a worker. Simon notices damage along the enclosure walls, and Claire admits the creature has tested the strength of its glass barriers. When the dinosaur finally emerges, Simon is stunned by its terrifying presence. Claire reveals that the Indominus Rex once had a sibling, but it didn't survive, having been eaten by the hybrid itself. Concerned about safety, Simon suggests bringing in Owen Grady, a former Navy member stationed on the island, to inspect the paddock. Meanwhile, Owen is seen training a group of velociraptors. When one of them, Blue, begins chasing a pig, Owen orders her to stop, and she listens. The rest of the raptors soon follow his commands, proving the unusual bond he has formed with them. After a successful training session, Vic Hoskins approaches Owen with a dangerous proposal. He believes the raptors could be used as living weapons in combat situations and wants Owen to help control them in real-world scenarios. Owen strongly opposes the idea, warning that the dinosaurs are still wild and unpredictable. Their argument is interrupted when the pig escapes its enclosure, causing chaos. An employee attempting to retrieve it is knocked down by Blue and nearly killed. Owen steps in just in time, calming the raptors and allowing the worker to escape. He orders the gates to be sealed and narrowly avoids being trapped himself. Thanks to his experience and training, disaster is avoided, at least for now. Before stepping away, Owen gives a final warning to one of the staff members, reminding him never to turn his back on a dinosaur enclosure. Elsewhere in the park, Gray is enjoying himself, laughing as he watches other kids interact with a gentle triceratops. His older brother, Zach, however, finds the experience dull. Taking advantage of Zara's momentary distraction, the brothers sneak away from her supervision. Their curiosity leads them to the T-Rex attraction, where Gray is both fascinated and horrified as the massive predator tears into a goat. At the same time, Claire heads to Owen's living quarters to ask him for help. She explains that she wants him to evaluate a newly created dinosaur in the park's laboratory. Confused, Owen questions why she needs him. Claire responds that his experience working closely with raptors makes him the only person capable of assessing the Indominus Rex's behavior before it is revealed to the public. Owen immediately bristles at this idea. He insists that he does not control the raptors, explaining instead that their cooperation is built on trust and mutual understanding. The conversation quickly turns personal, as Owen accuses Claire of trying to dominate everything, including people, which he says is why their relationship never progressed beyond one date. Claire fires back, claiming she never wanted a second date anyway. Frustrated, she storms out and tells Owen she'll wait in the car, adding that he should change his shirt since the Indominus Rex is extremely sensitive to scent. Meanwhile, the brothers continue exploring the park, and take seats in a massive stadium to witness the Mosasaurus, a colossal marine reptile unlike anything they've ever seen. To draw the creature to the surface, park staff lower a great white shark into the water. Moments later, the beast erupts from the lagoon, swallowing the shark whole. The crowd erupts in cheers, and once the show ends, the viewing platform descends, allowing visitors to glimpse the enormous predator beneath the surface. Back at Paddock 11, Claire orders a worker to release food into the Indominus Rex's enclosure so Owen can observe the animal. As Owen watches, he grows increasingly uneasy. He explains that creatures raised in complete isolation often develop severe behavioral issues. Unlike the Indominus, the raptors were raised together, allowing them to learn social behavior from one another. Owen also points out that he has been present since their birth, which is how he earned their trust. By contrast, the hybrid dinosaur's only form of interaction appears to be a mechanical feeding arm. Suddenly, something feels wrong. Despite the bait, the Indominus Rex does not appear. Claire attempts to track the dinosaur using thermal imaging, but the sensors fail to locate it. Owen notices deep claw marks along the enclosure walls, leading everyone to believe the animal has escaped. Claire insists that the dinosaur has a tracking implant and rushes to the control room to locate it. On the way, she contacts Lowry and demands the creature's coordinates. While Claire is away, Owen and two other employees enter the enclosure to inspect the damage. They are stunned to realize the dinosaur managed to climb a wall nearly 12 meters high. However, Lowry soon reports that the tracking system still shows the Indominus Rex inside the paddock. As he speaks with Claire, he alerts the control team that people are currently inside the enclosure and orders them removed immediately. Vivian attempts to warn the team, but it's already too late. The Indominus Rex suddenly reveals itself, trapping the workers inside. Panic erupts as the creature attacks, killing one employee instantly. Another manages to escape through the gate just before it is sealed. Owen narrowly slips out as the gate begins to close, but the dinosaur forces it open, breaking free from containment. Owen hides beneath a vehicle while a security guard seeks shelter nearby. The Indominus quickly detects the guard's scent, destroys the vehicle, and kills him. Realizing how the creature tracks prey, Owen ruptures a fuel line and drenches himself in gasoline to mask his smell. The risky tactic works. The dinosaur loses interest and wanders off. Soon after, Claire reaches the control room and orders a specialized containment unit to hunt down the escaped hybrid. Barry receives an alert about the breach, and Vic, seeing an opportunity, suggests deploying the raptors as part of the operation. As unsuspecting visitors kayak peacefully through the park's waterways, armed teams prepare to track the Indominus Rex, setting the stage for even greater danger. Owen storms into the control room, furious. He explains that the Indominus Rex never actually escaped at first. It deliberately clawed the wall to mislead the staff into thinking it had broken out. The entire move was a calculated distraction. Claire attempts to downplay the situation, insisting that the creature is still just an animal. Owen shuts that idea down immediately, reminding everyone that this is no ordinary dinosaur, but a highly intelligent predator capable of devastating the entire island. Watching the security feeds, Owen realizes that the containment team has been sent out with non-lethal equipment. He demands the mission be aborted, warning that without heavy weapons, those soldiers don't stand a chance. Simon refuses, arguing that too much money has been invested in the hybrid to destroy it. Owen insists they're sending men to their deaths, but his warnings are ignored. Out in the jungle, one of the soldiers discovers a chunk of flesh containing the tracking implant. The Indominus had remembered where the device was embedded and ripped it out intentionally. Hidden among the trees, perfectly camouflaged, the creature waits patiently before launching its attack. The team fires stun weapons, but the shocks only enrage it further. One by one, the soldiers are brutally killed, as the control room staff helplessly watch the massacre unfold on their screens. Realizing the severity of the threat, Owen urges an immediate evacuation. He argues that the Indominus Rex is a laboratory-made killing machine that will attack anything that moves. Claire hesitates, knowing that evacuating the park could permanently shut it down. Owen pushes harder, saying the only solution is to put the creature down. When no one supports him, he walks away, leaving them to face the consequences themselves. Claire finally orders the entire northern section of the resort closed and begins moving visitors out of the area. Meanwhile, Simon heads to the genetics lab and confronts Henry, the lead scientist behind the hybrid program. Henry insists he only created the Indominus because Simon demanded something bigger and more terrifying. He explains that you can't engineer a monster without also creating dangerous instincts to match. Elsewhere, Zack and Gray take advantage of the fact that Zara is no longer supervising them. They decide to ride in a gyrosphere, a reinforced vehicle designed to withstand extreme force. As they enjoy the peaceful view of dinosaurs roaming freely, the ride operator receives an urgent call ordering all gyrospheres to be recalled immediately. An alert appears instructing riders to return. Zack convinces Gray to ignore the warning and stay out a little longer. At the same time, Claire contacts Zara and orders her to take the boys back to the hotel, only to learn they've vanished. Claire manages to reach Zack by phone and tells him to return immediately, but interference disrupts the signal. The call drops. Panicked, Claire asks Lori to locate active gyrospheres in the valley. Once the boys' vehicle is identified, Vivian orders a retrieval team, but security is overwhelmed dealing with the escaped hybrid. Unable to wait, Claire decides to go herself. Before leaving, she tracks down Owen and begs for his help in finding her nephews. Meanwhile, Zack notices a broken gate, marked as restricted, and decides to enter despite Gray's protests. The younger brother tries to convince him to follow the park's instructions, but Zack ignores the warning. Inside, they encounter a group of Ankylosaurus, just moments before the Indominus Rex emerges and begins attacking the herd. As chaos erupts, the hybrid smashes into the gyrosphere, sending it rolling violently. One of the Ankylosaurus strikes the sphere, flinging it even farther. The Indominus struggles to bite through the armored back of the Ankylosaurus and instead flips the animal over, killing it by crushing its head. Though terrified, the brothers initially believe the gyrosphere will protect them. Claire repeatedly calls Zack, but the sphere is upside down, and he can't answer. The Indominus approaches and cracks the glass with its jaws. Unable to swallow the sphere whole, it slams it repeatedly against the ground, trying to break it apart. Realizing they won't survive inside, Zack unbuckles himself and Gray. They scramble out and reach the edge of a waterfall. With no other escape, they jump. Gray hesitates, but Zack encourages him, and together they plunge into the water below, narrowly escaping the monster. They swim to shore, shaken but alive, and Zack proudly acknowledges his brother's bravery. As Claire and Owen search the valley, they come across the aftermath of the Indominus's rampage, dozens of dead dinosaurs scattered across the land. Among them is a critically injured Apatosaurus. Owen gently comforts the dying animal, deeply affected by the moment. Watching this, Claire is overwhelmed. For the first time, she truly understands that these creatures are not just attractions. They feel pain and suffer like any living being. Owen realizes something even more disturbing. The Indominus hasn't been killing to eat. It's been killing for sport. Eventually, they find the wrecked gyrosphere. Claire discovers Zack's destroyed phone nearby and is immediately overwhelmed with fear, believing the worst may have happened to her nephews. Just as panic begins to set in, Owen studies the muddy ground and spots fresh footprints leading away from the wreckage. He tells Claire that the boys must have escaped on foot, meaning there's still hope they're alive. Without wasting time, the two prepare to follow the trail. Meanwhile, as Zack and Gray push through the dense forest, Gray comes across the hat of a park employee, clear evidence that something terrible has happened nearby. Not long after, Zack notices a rusted, overturned vehicle and realizes they've stumbled upon the remains of the original Jurassic Park. Exploring the abandoned site, they discover old expedition jeeps left behind for decades. Using his mechanical skills, Zack manages to get one of the vehicles running, allowing them to drive away from the ruins. Back in the control room, Simon tracks the hybrid's movement and realizes the Indominus Rex is heading south, straight toward the area where guests have been gathered for safety. Vic Hoskins then approaches Simon, claiming he has spent years studying the raptors and insists they could track and hunt the hybrid. Simon flatly refuses to unleash them, instead choosing to handle the situation personally. He boards a helicopter with a heavily armed team, intending to eliminate the creature from the air. Soon after, Claire and Owen reach the old park ruins and find one of the boys' shirts lying on the ground. As Owen attempts to start another vehicle, the Indominus suddenly emerges. The creature approaches but retreats briefly, only to return moments later, tearing the roof off their shelter. The two barely escape as the helicopter arrives overhead. From the air, the hybrid is spotted near the aviary, and the pilot moves in for an attack. A soldier opens fire, but the assault only worsens the situation. The Indominus crashes through the aviary structure, shattering the barriers and releasing hundreds of terrified pterosaurs. Panicked, the flying creatures swarm the helicopter, colliding with it mid-air. The aircraft spirals out of control and crashes, exploding on impact and killing everyone on board. As the sky fills with chaos, Claire and Owen flee into the forest, dodging the airborne predators. At the same time, Zack and Gray cross the park's outer gate and race toward the main resort. Gray spots the pterosaurs approaching and urges his brother to go faster. Zara contacts Claire after spotting the boys on surveillance cameras near the west gate. Claire tells her to stay with them and promises she's on the way. Owen jumps on his motorcycle, and the two speed toward the park. The pterosaurs soon reach the evacuated guest area, unleashing widespread terror. The creatures attack indiscriminately, people, animals, anything in sight. As panic erupts, Claire and Owen arrive and begin helping survivors. Zara finds the boys and tries to guide them to safety, but she is suddenly seized by the flying predators and dropped into the lagoon. In a horrifying moment, both she and the attacking creature are dragged underwater and consumed by the Mosasaurus. Amid gunfire and screams, Claire desperately calls out for her nephews. The boys appear, running for their lives as a pterosaur closes in. Just in time, the creature is shot down. Owen is also attacked and struggles to fight it off until Claire intervenes, killing the animal with a firearm. Overwhelmed with relief, Owen kisses Claire as the boys look on. She immediately rushes to her nephews and pulls them away from the danger. With Simon gone, Vic seizes control of the operation and storms the control room, firing the original staff and replacing them with his own team. Laurie secretly alerts Claire about Vic's actions. When Owen learns that Vic plans to deploy the raptors, he is furious. Night has fallen by the time they reach the raptor enclosure. Owen confronts Vic and punches him, ordering him out. Vic insists the mission will continue regardless. Realizing the danger, Owen agrees to participate, knowing he's the only one the raptors will follow. The plan is to let the raptors track the Indominus using its scent, surround it as a pack, and then allow the soldiers to strike. Owen warns the team not to fire at the raptors under any circumstances. Claire puts the boys in the back of a truck, ready to escape if things go wrong. Owen lets the raptors smell a piece of flesh containing residue from the tracker and releases them into the jungle. He and the soldiers follow, watching live footage from cameras mounted on the animals. Suddenly, the raptors stop. Owen knows immediately they've found something. The soldiers prepare to engage as the Indominus Rex emerges. But instead of attacking, the raptors begin communicating with the creature. Owen's expression changes as he realizes something has gone terribly wrong. Owen suddenly understands why the park executives never disclosed the full genetic makeup of the hybrid. He reveals the truth. The Indominus Rex carries raptor DNA. Before anyone can react, Vic orders his men to open fire. The Indominus is hit, but the attack barely slows it down. Wounded and enraged, the creature escapes into the jungle, leaving the raptors to turn their attention toward the humans instead. Owen attempts to approach one of the raptors, trying to reestablish their bond, but a soldier panics and detonates an explosive, killing the animal instantly. With the mission completely unraveling, Vic's men abandon the operation, fleeing the area and leaving Owen and Bari behind. Bari hides inside a hollow tree, but a raptor quickly finds him and tries to drag him out. Owen intervenes, revving his motorcycle to lure the creature away, and it gives chase. From the control cameras, Claire watches the chaos unfold while trying to keep her nephews calm. Suddenly, a badly injured soldier slams against the truck window, begging Claire to drive away. As she speeds off, another raptor crashes through the glass, but Claire manages to knock it unconscious. Still, the remaining raptors continue the pursuit. Claire runs one of them over, but Blue stays relentlessly on their trail. Gray finds a stun weapon, and with Zach's help, they shock Blue just long enough to escape. Moments later, Owen catches up on his motorcycle and signals Claire to follow him. Back in the control room, staff members are ordered to evacuate. Vivian urges Laurie to leave, telling him a boat is ready, but he refuses to go until everyone else is safe. Owen leads Claire and the boys to the Innovation Center, where they take shelter. Inside the lab, they encounter Vic once again. He reveals that his team has been collecting remaining embryos, planning to continue genetic experiments elsewhere. When Claire asks about Henry, Vic coldly admits the scientist works for him. Their goal was never entertainment. It was to weaponize dinosaur DNA for military use. Before Vic can say more, a raptor bursts into the room and kills him instantly. The group seizes the moment to escape, but the raptors quickly close in. Thinking fast, Gray activates a dinosaur hologram, distracting the predators long enough for them to flee. Outside, two more raptors block their path. Owen steps forward and speaks to Blue, hoping she remembers the trust they once shared. Just then, the Indominus Rex reappears and asserts dominance over the raptors. For a tense moment, it seems the pack will side with the hybrid, but Blue turns back to Owen. She attacks the Indominus and is badly injured in the process. The remaining raptors join the fight, launching a coordinated assault. Owen fires at the Indominus while Claire rushes off with a desperate plan of her own. Despite the pack's efforts, the hybrid overwhelms the raptors and resumes hunting Owen and the boys. Claire contacts Laurie and orders him to open Paddock 9. He resists, knowing the danger, but ultimately complies. As the massive gate opens, Claire waves a flare to draw attention. Moments later, the T-Rex charges out of the enclosure. Claire throws the flare toward the Indominus, and the two titans collide in a ferocious battle. The T-Rex struggles against the genetically enhanced hybrid and begins to lose ground, until Blue returns, joining the fight despite her injuries. Together, the T-Rex and the Raptor force the Indominus toward the lagoon. In a sudden, decisive moment, the Mosasaurus erupts from the water, seizing the Indominus and dragging it beneath the surface. Even the hybrid's immense power is no match. The threat is finally gone. After the battle, the T-Rex turns away, leaving the survivors untouched. Blue pauses, locking eyes with Owen one last time before disappearing into the ruins. The following morning, the survivors are evacuated from the island and treated for their injuries. Zack and Gray are reunited with their parents, who are overwhelmed with relief. Claire shares an emotional reunion with her sister before saying goodbye to her nephews. She then finds Owen, and the two leave together, bonded by everything they survived on Isla Nublar. As the island is abandoned, the T-Rex still roams free. Whether the dinosaurs will reclaim the land or humanity will ever truly control it again remains uncertain. Analysis: what if the greatest warning in cinematic history was completely ignored? More than 20 years ago, dinosaurs were brought back to life, and it ended in disaster. Now imagine this: the park didn't fail, it worked. Welcome to Jurassic World, a world where dinosaurs aren't a miracle anymore, they're a business. Families take selfies with a Mosasaurus. Kids cheer as predators are fed on schedule. Danger has been sanitized, branded, and sold as entertainment. And that's where the real horror begins. Jurassic World isn't just about dinosaurs breaking loose again. It's about what happens when wonder becomes boring, when spectacle replaces respect, and when humans decide that nature needs an upgrade to stay profitable. This movie asks a dangerous question. If the impossible becomes normal, how far do we push it to feel something again? In this video, we're breaking down why Jurassic World mattered, what it says about modern audiences, and how a theme park full of dinosaurs became a mirror for our obsession with bigger, louder, and more extreme thrills. Because in Jurassic World, the dinosaurs aren't the biggest monsters anymore. Released in 2015, Jurassic World didn't just continue a franchise, it rebooted its promise. This is the world audiences were teased back in the 1990s, a dinosaur park that actually works. The movie blends science fiction, action, and adventure, but at its core, it's a thriller driven by one idea: control. Control over nature, control over science, control over fear. The setting takes us back to Isla Nublar, more than 2 decades after the original catastrophe. This time, the fences are stronger, the systems are smarter, and the park is fully operational, complete with hotels, attractions, and thousands of daily visitors. On the surface, everything is perfect, but beneath that polished surface lies a dangerous truth. People aren't impressed anymore. Dinosaurs, once miracles, have become normal. So the park's creators do what modern entertainment always does when attention fades. They build something bigger, smarter, deadlier. Without giving away spoilers, the premise is simple but explosive. When science is pushed beyond responsibility in the name of spectacle, the consequences don't just escape, they hunt. Jurassic World sets the stage not for chaos caused by accident, but chaos born from ambition. And once that line is crossed, there's no fence high enough to contain what comes next. On the surface, Jurassic World looks like a straightforward action blockbuster. Dinosaurs, explosions, survival. But underneath the spectacle, this movie is doing something smarter and more unsettling. Yes, it's science fiction. Yes, it's action and adventure. But at its core, Jurassic World is a modern monster movie wrapped in corporate satire. The real threat isn't just teeth and claws, it's human arrogance. One of the film's strongest themes is the commercialization of wonder. Dinosaurs were once unimaginable miracles. Here, they're customer attractions with wait times and merchandise. And when people stop being amazed, the solution isn't reflection, it's escalation. That leads directly into the second major theme: control versus nature. The film repeatedly shows humans trying to dominate life itself through genetics, training, technology, only to learn that nature doesn't follow business plans. Emotionally, the movie balances awe with tension. There's excitement, nostalgia, and adrenaline, but also an underlying sense of unease. You're not just watching dinosaurs attack, you're watching a system collapse under its own ego. As for its audience, Jurassic World knows exactly who it's speaking to. It's built for fans of the original films, modern blockbuster audiences, and anyone who enjoys high-stakes survival stories, but it also quietly challenges viewers by asking, when danger is engineered for entertainment, who's really being consumed? Because in Jurassic World, the scariest thing isn't what the dinosaurs do. It's why they were created in the first place. the story of Jurassic World begins where the original dream was supposed to end. Jurassic Park didn't fail forever, it evolved. The island of Isla Nublar is now home to a fully functioning theme park. Dinosaurs roam in controlled environments. Visitors feel safe. The chaos of the past has been reduced to history lessons and souvenirs. But success brings a new problem: boredom. Attendance is slowing, excitement is fading, and the park's creators believe they've found the answer, not in restraint but in innovation. Using genetic engineering, they design a brand new hybrid dinosaur. Bigger, smarter, more aggressive. Built not for balance but for attention. That decision changes everything. When this creature escapes containment, it doesn't behave like a normal animal. It adapts, it observes, it learns, and suddenly the illusion of control shatters. What starts as a containment failure quickly becomes an island-wide emergency. Systems collapse, communication breaks down, visitors become prey, and the park built on order descends into survival. As the situation spirals, one truth becomes clear: this isn't an accident. It's the natural consequence of pushing science without humility. The story moves relentlessly forward, from spectacle to suspense to outright catastrophe, forcing both characters and viewers to confront the same realization. You can cage nature, but you can never own it. And once the balance is broken, there's only one question left: who makes it out alive? By the time Jurassic World reaches its final moments, the question is no longer how the park failed. It's what lesson survives the wreckage. The climax isn't just a battle, it's a reckoning. The hybrid that was engineered to be the ultimate attraction, faster, smarter, stronger, meets an ending that no algorithm could predict. Not through human control, not through technology, but through forces older, wilder, and fundamentally uncontrollable. This is where the movie draws its line. The return of the T-Rex isn't nostalgia for its own sake, it's symbolic. The past, the original power of nature, rises to confront the arrogance of the present. The message is clear: evolution doesn't need upgrades, and nature doesn't need permission. Character arcs close quietly here. Survival isn't framed as triumph, it's relief. The survivors don't celebrate control, they escape it. And the park, once a monument to human confidence, is left broken and abandoned. But the ending isn't purely victorious. It leaves us with an uncomfortable truth: humans didn't learn this lesson the first time, and nothing suggests they won't try again. So what does the ending really mean? That science without humility becomes destruction. That spectacle without responsibility turns predatory. And that no matter how advanced we become, nature always waits for its turn. Because in Jurassic World, the dinosaurs don't win. Nature does. Jurassic World rewards viewers who look beyond the chaos. Beneath the explosions and dinosaur chases lies a layer of storytelling that's easy to miss, but impossible to ignore once you see it. Let's start with the most obvious symbol hiding in plain sight. The abandoned Jurassic Park Visitor Center isn't just a nostalgic callback, it's a graveyard of forgotten warnings. Dust-covered banners, broken displays, and decayed relics silently remind us that everything going wrong has already happened once before and was ignored. Then there's the Indominus Rex itself. Its pale, almost colorless skin makes it look unfinished, unnatural. Unlike other dinosaurs, it doesn't belong to any ecosystem. It's a blank canvas of human ambition, designed without balance, without history, and without consequence in mind. Watch closely and you'll notice how often glass and reflections appear throughout the film. Control rooms, observation windows, containment barriers, all symbols of artificial dominance. And every time they fail, glass cracks. Systems go dark, illusions of control shatter. Even the raptors carry symbolism. They aren't controlled by force but by earned trust. When that trust breaks, so does the hierarchy, suggesting that respect works where domination doesn't. And finally, foreshadowing. Early dialogue casually dismisses danger. Jokes are made about safety. Confidence replaces caution. These moments aren't filler, they're warnings quietly planted before everything collapses. Jurassic World doesn't scream its message. It plants it and lets it grow. Because the most dangerous details in this movie aren't the ones that roar. They're the ones we choose not to see. Behind all the roaring dinosaurs and collapsing fences, Jurassic World has a production story just as massive as what we see on screen. Let's start with scale. The film became a global phenomenon, earning over $1.6 billion worldwide, instantly proving that audiences still wanted dinosaurs, just bigger, louder, and faster than ever before. But here's the surprising part: not everything you see is digital. While the movie uses cutting-edge CGI, the filmmakers deliberately brought back practical dinosaur effects wherever possible. Full-scale animatronic heads, claws, and bodies were built so actors weren't reacting to empty air. That physical presence adds weight to the fear, and it shows. Chris Pratt, who plays Owen Grady, didn't just act like a raptor trainer. He studied real-world animal behavior, working with trainers to understand dominance, body language, and trust building. The way he interacts with the raptors is rooted in real animal psychology, not superhero bravado. And those dinosaur sounds, they're not just roars pulled from a computer. Sound designers mixed noises from whales, elephants, tigers, dogs, and even tortoises to give each creature a unique and unsettling vocal identity, familiar enough to feel real, but alien enough to feel wrong. There's also trivia fans love to debate. Early script drafts leaned much darker, with heavier emphasis on horror and corporate cruelty. Some of that was softened to make the film more accessible, but traces of that original edge remain beneath the spectacle. Jurassic World wasn't just made to entertain. It was engineered, carefully, to balance nostalgia, innovation, and modern blockbuster demands. And much like the park in the movie, the creation itself was a calculated risk. To understand Jurassic World, you have to look at what it's standing next to. And the biggest comparison is unavoidable. Jurassic Park, 1993, was about wonder. It took its time. It let silence breathe. Dinosaurs felt like miracles, beautiful, terrifying, and rare. Jurassic World, on the other hand, is about momentum. It reflects a different era of filmmaking. Faster pacing, bigger set pieces, louder threats. Where the original asked, "Should we do this?" Jurassic World asks, "How do we top it?" That difference isn't accidental, it's the point. In many ways, Jurassic World plays like a commentary on modern blockbusters themselves. Just as audiences inside the movie grow bored with dinosaurs, real-world audiences have grown used to spectacle. So the film escalates, bigger monsters, higher stakes, non-stop action. When compared to other monster-driven films like Godzilla or King Kong, Jurassic World sits somewhere in the middle. It's less focused on raw destruction and more on engineered chaos, danger created deliberately, then sold as entertainment. What does Jurassic World do better? Pacing and accessibility, clear modern visuals, and scale crowd-pleasing spectacle. Where does it fall short? Less philosophical depth than its predecessor characters that sometimes exist to move the plot, but here's the twist. Those shortcomings mirror the movie's message. Jurassic World knows it's louder than before. It knows it's chasing bigger thrills. And by leaning into that, it becomes both the product and the critique of blockbuster evolution. So when people argue whether Jurassic World is better or worse than the original, they might be missing the point. It's not trying to replace Jurassic Park. It's showing us what happens when we try. When Jurassic World hit theaters, the reaction was immediate and massive. Audiences showed up in record numbers. Theaters were packed. Nostalgia was powerful. For many viewers, this wasn't just a movie. It was a return to a childhood obsession, updated for a new generation. The scale, the dinosaurs, the action, people loved the ride. Financially, the response was undeniable. Jurassic World became one of the highest-grossing films of all time, proving that the franchise still had cultural dominance. But critics, they were more divided. Some praised the film's self-awareness, its modern pacing, and its ability to reflect on blockbuster excess while still delivering spectacle. Others argued that while the movie was entertaining, it lacked the emotional depth, tension, and restraint that made the original iconic. And that's where the debate really begins. Is Jurassic World overrated because it leans heavily on nostalgia and spectacle? Or is it underrated because people overlook its commentary on consumer culture and entertainment fatigue? The truth sits somewhere in between. Jurassic World became a divisive success, a film loved by general audiences, questioned by critics, and endlessly debated by fans. Some see it as a hollow reboot. Others see it as a clever reflection of why reboots exist in the first place. What's undeniable is this: whether people praised it or criticized it, they talked about it. And in a franchise built on survival, relevance is everything. Because in the end, Jurassic World didn't just resurrect dinosaurs. It reignited the conversation. So after the dust settles, the fences fall, and the roars fade, what is Jurassic World really worth? At its best, this movie understands exactly what it is. Its greatest strength is pure cinematic spectacle. The scale is massive, the pacing rarely lets up, and the dinosaurs feel powerful, dangerous, and alive. It successfully reintroduces a legendary franchise to a modern audience without pretending it's still the 1990s. The film also deserves credit for its self-awareness. Beneath the action lies a sharp observation about consumer culture, how audiences crave bigger thrills, and how that hunger can quietly erase caution, nuance, and respect for boundaries. But Jurassic World isn't flawless. Some characters exist more as functions than fully realized people. Emotional depth occasionally takes a backseat to momentum, and viewers looking for the philosophical restraint of the original Jurassic Park may find this entry louder than it is thoughtful. So who should watch it? If you love high-energy blockbusters, creature features, and nostalgia-driven spectacle, Jurassic World delivers exactly what it promises. If you're willing to look beneath the surface, there's more substance here than its reputation suggests. The final recommendation is simple. Jurassic World may not recapture the quiet magic of its predecessor, but it understands why that magic mattered and why we keep chasing it. Because in the end, the lesson remains unchanged. We were so busy asking if we could bring dinosaurs back, we never stopped to ask what it would cost. REVIEWS. The original Jurassic Park remains a personal favorite of mine. It's an incredibly entertaining and suspenseful film, packed with edge-of-your-seat moments and crafted with remarkable skill. John Williams' iconic score is unforgettable, and the dinosaurs themselves completely steal the show. While The Lost World certainly has its fans, I found it to be a noticeable drop in quality and among Spielberg's weaker efforts. Jurassic Park III was even more underwhelming. Jurassic World doesn't come close to matching the magic of the original, and I didn't feel it was quite the triumphant revival many claimed it to be. Still, despite its flaws and uneven stretches, it represents a significant improvement over the previous two sequels. On its own merits, it's an enjoyable blockbuster that succeeds more often than it fails. From a technical standpoint, Jurassic World is impressively made. The cinematography is polished and vibrant, with environments that feel both lush and immersive. The dinosaurs look fantastic, and they are easily the film's greatest strength. Beyond their visual design, they're thrilling, frightening, and often a joy to watch. Their sequences are among the most effective in the film, and honestly, there could have been even more of them. The Indominus Rex in particular is genuinely terrifying. The stalking scenes are tense enough to keep you glued to your seat, only to make you jump moments later. Michael Giacchino's score is rousing and well composed, incorporating familiar themes from Williams' original music in a way that feels respectful rather than forced. These musical callbacks add a strong sense of nostalgia and blend seamlessly with the new material. The film's references to the earlier movies are fun and often clever, giving longtime fans plenty to enjoy. While it doesn't reach the same level of suspense as the original, it still delivers a solid number of thrills, especially in the latter half. The direction keeps things moving efficiently, maintaining tension when it matters most, and the performances are generally solid, even if the characters themselves aren't always well written. Chris Pratt brings charm, warmth, and humor to his role, making him immediately likable. Bryce Dallas Howard does well too, despite having to work with one of the film's most poorly developed characters. Vincent D'Onofrio injects intensity into an otherwise thin and underused role, putting in more effort than the script really supports. That said, Jurassic World has some significant issues. Not all the performances land. Judy Greer's role can be grating, and the child actors often feel forced, with a backstory that ultimately goes nowhere. The screenplay is inconsistent. While it has its moments, it frequently feels cluttered, as if it's trying to juggle too many ideas at once. Some dialogue is awkward and cringeworthy, and several plot turns feel misplaced. Character development is weak across the board, with most figures coming across as cliched and underwritten, particularly Claire. Any attempt at character arcs feels rushed or incomplete, especially where the children are concerned. The romantic subplot between Owen and Claire tends to slow the pacing and relies on some strained dialogue. Although the story rarely becomes outright boring and is more exciting than sluggish, it lacks the sense of wonder, sustained suspense, intelligence, and originality that define the original Jurassic Park. At times, it feels like a predictable retread, with tonal inconsistencies that weaken the experience. The heavy exposition in the opening half hour drags on far too long without adding anything particularly engaging, and the finale veers into silliness, ending on a note that feels underwhelming rather than climactic. More broadly, going to the movies has started to feel like a chore, not just because of rising ticket prices or uninspired trends, but because films like this rely on overwhelming noise and excess. If a movie gives me a headache at home due to its relentless volume, it's easier to pause and grab an aspirin. Jurassic World pushes the franchise created over 2 decades ago to an extreme, showcasing how overindulgent computer-generated effects have become while stripping away the simplicity that once made these films so enjoyable. It's been nearly 15 years since the last entry, and what was exciting in the first 2 films, tedious in the third, now feels excessive, bloody, and often irritating. When dinosaurs themselves start to feel cliched, it may be time to explore new ideas. The park that was once envisioned as a wonder has finally become reality, but it's run by short-sighted scientists obsessed with making creatures bigger, deadlier, and more aggressive. Peaceful moments with herbivores, where visitors walk among them as if through a pasture, briefly recapture the awe of the original. Yet, no matter how visually impressive these scenes are, the film ultimately fails to learn meaningful lessons from its predecessors. Tampering with what was once near perfect is painfully obvious, especially when it comes to the forced inclusion of children and the trope of a career-driven aunt who can barely relate to other humans, let alone her own family. The central female lead is, frankly, difficult to warm up to. She's surrounded by an army of clueless characters, and while the dialogue tries very hard to sound intelligent and scientific, it mostly comes across as hollow posturing. At times, it feels like the dinosaurs themselves should be sighing in disbelief, along with the audience. Hollywood's ongoing fixation on recycling familiar franchises for guaranteed ticket sales is painfully obvious here, and the lack of creative ambition really shows. The film does manage to generate excitement during its larger action moments, especially when a swarm of flying reptiles descends on one of the park's public spaces. There are also a few quieter interludes meant to add heart, like tending to an injured long-necked dinosaur, but these moments only underline how safe and unadventurous modern blockbuster storytelling has become. Instead of pushing forward with bold ideas, the filmmakers lean heavily on nostalgia and repetition. As someone who adored the original dinosaur classic as a kid back in the early 90s, I went into this rebooted sequel cautiously optimistic. I conveniently ignored the memory of the earlier follow-ups, which were forgettable at best. What I got this time was a movie that's all over the place. There are stretches that work and others that are deeply frustrating. It's a patchwork of highs and lows, leaning more toward uneven than inspired. Whenever the dinosaurs take center stage, the movie springs to life. These are the moments where it actually delivers on its promise of spectacle and fun. Unfortunately, everything involving the human characters drags the experience down. The script feels overworked and undercooked at the same time, filled with cliches, dated gender dynamics, and a romance that feels ripped from a decades-old paperback novel. The children are particularly irritating, one oddly unsettling, the other little more than a walking tantrum. A couple of the supporting actors manage to inject some personality into their roles, but the main heroine is a major misfire. The attempts to make her witty or charming never land, and the stiff performance makes things worse. The way the female characters are written is especially disappointing, reinforcing stereotypes rather than challenging them. Even a stronger performance wouldn't have saved such thin characterization. Structurally, the story is a mess. The film starts out suggesting a grand, operational look at a fully functioning theme park, but quickly abandons that idea in favor of a narrow, clumsy personal drama. One character is awkwardly pushed into villain territory without convincing motivation, and it doesn't work at all. What's more frustrating is that we finally get to see the park bustling with visitors, only for them to vanish from relevance almost immediately after a single showcase sequence. Now for the positives. The dinosaurs themselves are undeniably entertaining. The visual effects are polished and convincing, especially when the creatures are shown in water. The genetically engineered superpredator serves its purpose as a threat, but the real scene stealers are the raptors. Their storyline could have been laughable, yet it surprisingly ends up being the most engaging aspect of the film. The final showdown delivers solid monster mayhem and outshines several recent creature features. In the end, the movie is a strange blend of impressive visuals, weak writing, and recycled ideas. It's intermittently thrilling, provided you're willing to tune out the poorly written human elements. The 3D version adds some depth to the experience, though it rarely uses the format in creative ways. At this stage, even top-tier visual effects are starting to lose their impact. We've seen these creatures rampage before, and the latest engineered menace doesn't bring much new to the table. Despite being hyped as smarter and deadlier, it behaves much like any other oversized predator. Once again, imperiled children are used as an easy emotional shortcut, and the adult authority figure responsible for them comes off as cold, self-absorbed, and reckless. The film leans heavily on familiar formulas, and that familiarity is ultimately its biggest weakness. At the center of Jurassic World is a familiar setup. Chris Pratt plays the confident, no-nonsense dinosaur handler who has somehow managed to earn the trust of a pack of velociraptors. As expected, the kids ignore every warning they're given, wander where they shouldn't, and end up fighting for their lives. Once that happens, the movie shifts into rescue mode, and everything begins to spiral out of control. The film leans heavily on escalating danger, stacking one crisis on top of another. Along the way, the two main adult characters, who initially feel fairly stiff and underdeveloped, start to soften toward each other after a prickly first meeting. None of this is especially awful, but it is very familiar. The story rarely surprises, and it's hard to ignore how often these films gloss over the consequences. People are injured or killed left and right, yet the heroes barely seem to register it. In any real-world scenario, the lawsuits alone would shut the park down overnight, and several characters would be facing criminal charges rather than victory poses. Set roughly 20 years after the earlier disasters, the story introduces a fully operational dinosaur theme park that appears safer, sleeker, and more visitor-friendly than ever. Bryce Dallas Howard plays a tightly wound corporate executive who invites her nephews to the park, only for things to go spectacularly wrong once a genetically engineered predator escapes. With the help of Pratt's Owen, she races against time to find the missing kids and prevent further bloodshed. Despite its recycled elements, there's a strong case to be made that this is the strongest entry since the original. While the earlier films hover around decent but forgettable, this one edges higher thanks to a wildly entertaining final act. The closing stretch delivers real tension, crowd-pleasing spectacle, and the kind of large-scale chaos summer blockbusters are meant to provide. In fact, it's hard not to think that recent monster movies, Godzilla in particular, could have learned a thing or two from this approach. That said, the Save the Kids storyline feels especially tired here and never quite lands with the emotional punch it's aiming for. The real excitement kicks in when the dinosaurs finally collide with the public inside the park. Without spoiling specifics, those moments are easily the most thrilling in the film, and it's a shame the movie doesn't lean into them more often. Visually, the movie shines. The special effects are outstanding, making the dinosaurs feel tangible and massive. Several up-close encounters are so well executed that it genuinely feels like these creatures are sharing the screen with the actors. The climactic battles are among the most exciting the franchise has ever produced. The cast does solid work across the board. Pratt is a natural action lead, Howard brings intensity to her role, and supporting players like Vincent D'Onofrio, Omar Sy, Judy Greer, and B.D. Wong add texture to the story. The design of the park itself is also a highlight. From futuristic transport vehicles to expansive enclosures, it restores a sense of awe the series hadn't captured since the original film. The 1993 Jurassic Park remains a landmark, blending cutting-edge effects with classic monster movie tension, borrowing heavily from earlier ideas while refining them into something iconic. The sequels never quite matched that magic, even with Steven Spielberg returning to direct the second installment. After years of delays, Jurassic World finally arrived and shattered box office records. This time around, the park is overseen by billionaire Simon Masrani, who carries on John Hammond's dream, only bigger and flashier. To keep audiences coming, the scientists push boundaries they shouldn't, leading Dr. Wu to engineer the Indominus Rex, a monstrous hybrid with intelligence, size, and abilities that feel almost superpowered. At times, it's so over-the-top you half expect it to turn invisible and start clicking like the Predator. In the end, Jurassic World doesn't reinvent the franchise, but it does deliver polished thrills, impressive visuals, and a finale that reminds audiences why dinosaurs on the big screen are still such a draw. The way the hybrid creature breaks free from its enclosure strongly echoes Hannibal Lecter, particularly the calculated deception used to outsmart its handlers. At the center of the story is Claire Dearing, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, a tightly wound corporate executive obsessed with efficiency, attendance figures, and profit margins. Her dedication to the park leaves little room for family, and she barely manages to acknowledge her two nephews, who are visiting Isla Nublar under her watch. Once the Indominus Rex escapes, chaos predictably follows. Enter Owen Grady, Chris Pratt, part-time romantic interest, full-time action hero, former Navy man, and improbably successful dinosaur trainer. He has somehow managed to condition velociraptors like obedient dogs, which feels at odds with how earlier films portrayed them as relentless, hyper-intelligent killing machines. This shift leads to one of the film's more absurd side stories. A private defense contractor's scheme to weaponize raptors for military deployment in unstable regions. It's hard not to raise an eyebrow when a specific part of Afghanistan is named as a potential testing ground, particularly given the real-world history of that region. On a personal note, I couldn't help recalling an old, uncomfortable habit of watching older studio films just to see how quickly the black character would be killed off. In the original Jurassic Park, Samuel L. Jackson didn't last very long either. That said, the movie is entertaining. For the first time in the franchise, we finally see a fully operational dinosaur theme park, and those sequences are genuinely impressive. That's helped by the fact that parts of the film were shot in an abandoned real-world theme park, which adds authenticity. The CGI dinosaurs are the best the series has ever offered, although it's noticeable that many of the big set pieces take place at night, possibly to mask digital limitations. Director Colin Trevorrow, still relatively new to big-budget filmmaking, handles the spectacle competently, but without the visual magic or tension-building mastery associated with Steven Spielberg. There's nothing here that rivals the iconic fence-climbing scene from the original. In fairness, modern blockbuster filmmaking, perfected by the Marvel machine, has shown that almost any capable director can deliver large-scale action, even those better known for prestige or classical work. The real weakness lies in the screenplay. It functions, but that's about it. The plot moves forward mechanically, ticking boxes without surprise or depth. Character development is paper-thin. We learn almost nothing about the protagonists beyond a few broad personality traits. Compare this to how richly drawn the characters were in Jurassic Park, where even secondary roles left an impression. Here, characters exist mainly to either save the day or become dinosaur snacks. The logic gaps don't help either. The entire crisis hinges on people entering the Indominus enclosure without first checking the tracking data from the implant designed specifically to locate her. One can't help but wonder how many years of development went into a script that relies on such an obvious oversight. Still, from a technical standpoint, the effects team clearly earned their paycheck. This is easily the best-looking entry in the franchise. Whether it's called Jurassic World or Jurassic Park hardly matters. Most audiences will refer to it by the latter anyway. What we get ultimately is a polished remix of the original film. Bigger dinosaurs, louder action, shinier visuals. It's fun, no doubt, but fun alone only goes so far. Chris Pratt brings charm and swagger and does everything possible to elevate the material, but even he can't push it beyond its limits. The film is undeniably set up for sequels, and that trajectory is about as predictable as it gets. The dinosaurs are back again, and they've never looked better or more evolved. A bit more intelligence in the writing, though, would have made all the difference. The story kicks off when Owen and two fellow staff members enter a remote enclosure to assess the park's newest attraction, a genetically engineered dinosaur known as the Indominus Rex. What begins as a routine inspection quickly turns deadly. The creature outsmarts its handlers, kills the two employees, and escapes into the jungle. Owen narrowly survives and urges park owner Masrani to eliminate the animal immediately. Masrani, however, is reluctant to destroy an investment that cost millions, trusting instead that his security forces can track and recapture it. That confidence proves disastrous, as the team is swiftly wiped out by the Indominus. With the situation spiraling out of control, Claire orders a full evacuation of the island's visitors. Chaos only escalates when the park's pterosaurs break free from their aviary, sending the remaining crowds into panic. At the same time, Claire's nephews, Gray and Zach, are trapped in a restricted zone while riding a gyrosphere. Claire and Owen race against time to find them. As the island collapses into mayhem, Vic Hoskins takes charge and pushes forward with a risky plan. Deploying 4 trained velociraptors to hunt down the Indominus Rex, whether this reckless strategy can succeed becomes the film's central question. Jurassic World is a movie that rarely surprises. Viewers generally know what's coming long before it happens. Still, it delivers solid entertainment thanks to impressive visual effects, competent performances, and a powerful musical score. Some elements, however, feel misplaced. The romantic subplot between Claire and Owen seems unnecessary and underdeveloped, adding little to the overall story. Likewise, Masrani personally piloting a helicopter feels like an odd choice for a wealthy corporate executive and strains believability. Overall, I'd give the film a 6 out of 10. I didn't rush to see this 4th installment in the Jurassic Park franchise. After the gradual decline of the earlier sequels, there wasn't much urgency. When I finally watched Jurassic World, I had to admit that it was visually stunning, much like the original film back in 1993. It's an enjoyable spectacle, no doubt. But almost everything on display had already been explored in previous entries. The Indominus Rex may appear new, yet it's essentially another variation on the genetic experimentation themes that launched the franchise in the first place. The performances are perfectly serviceable, though no one is given material that allows for truly memorable acting moments. The script limits the depth of its characters, and the actors do the best they can within those constraints. Once again, CGI carries the movie. The dinosaurs look convincing and lifelike, especially considering they're based entirely on fossil records and scientific assumptions. There's also a subtle layer of satire aimed at modern consumer culture, the idea that everything must be bigger, louder, and more extreme to satisfy audiences. Ironically, this mindset is exactly what caused disaster in the earlier films, making it strange that the characters continue rebuilding dinosaur theme parks as if no lessons were learned. While Jurassic World is undeniably fun and visually impressive, it doesn't break new ground, nor does it feel essential to the franchise's legacy. The film blends elements of sequel, reboot, and remake, retelling the original story with minor adjustments. A theme park gone wrong, escaped dinosaurs, and two children at the center of the chaos. In the end, it's a familiar ride, exciting at times, but ultimately lacking the originality and wonder that once made the series unforgettable. As expected, the story unfolds along very familiar lines, and in line with modern blockbuster trends, the film is packed with even more dinosaurs than before. Their increased presence certainly boosts the visual scale, and there's no denying that a massive budget is clearly visible on screen, especially in the effects work, which is polished and frequently impressive. Where the film struggles, however, is in its storytelling. The original relied heavily on chaos theory as a clever narrative engine, giving the unfolding disaster a sense of inevitability. Here, the plot leans instead on events that feel less coherent and are largely brushed aside with the assumption that the audience won't question them too closely. Ultimately, the specifics of who is doing what and why aren't especially important because the destination is obvious from the start. What is disappointing is the lack of real suspense. Many of the major sequences feel flatter than they should, missing the sharp tension that once defined the franchise. This problem is compounded by the cast of characters, many of whom feel like watered-down stand-ins for familiar archetypes from earlier films. Rather than refreshing the formula, these parallels only emphasize how generic and less engaging the new characters are. By the final act, few of them leave a strong impression, whether positioned as heroes, villains, or something in between. It's also worth noting how unevenly the female characters are treated. The lead character is frequently criticized for being distant from her family and is portrayed as emotionally rigid for much of the runtime. Another female character's death has already drawn attention for being particularly excessive. While it doesn't appear intentionally malicious, it stands out in an unfortunate way. Most other deaths are handled anonymously, designed to shock younger viewers at first, but eventually blending together into something oddly sanitized, aside from one notably grim sequence. Taken as a whole, the film does succeed as broad entertainment. The spectacle is large enough to keep things moving, and there's a steady stream of visual noise designed to distract and impress. Still, the narrative is clumsy, the characters lack depth, and the action beats rarely reach the heights they should. As a summer blockbuster, it delivers surface-level excitement, but little beyond that. Serving as a new chapter following a legendary trilogy, the film aims to recapture the awe of giant prehistoric creatures brought to life through a blend of cutting-edge digital effects and practical animatronics. The dinosaurs, particularly the massive predators and swift pack hunters, are undeniably the stars, portrayed as both terrifying and convincingly real. Inspired by the original source material and expanded by new creative voices, the film revisits Isla Nublar, a remote island off the coast of Central America. Decades after the catastrophic failure of the first park, a fully operational dinosaur resort now exists, where genetically engineered creatures roam freely and are bred for public spectacle. Scientists, pushing their experiments even further, introduce a brand new hybrid dinosaur designed to be the park's ultimate attraction. Predictably, this creation proves impossible to control, setting off a chain of events that leads to chaos, panic, and loss of life. Amid this, the park's tightly wound operations manager finds herself hosting her two young nephews, though her demanding job leaves little time for them. Delegating their care to an assistant, she remains focused on keeping the park running smoothly, unaware that everything is about to spiral completely out of control. The story centers on Owen Grady, a skilled animal behavior specialist who works alongside his colleague Barry to train a pack of 4 velociraptors. Meanwhile, InGen security officer Vic Hoskins, driven by ambition and questionable motives, believes these creatures could be weaponized for military purposes. The entire operation is overseen by park owner Masrani, an ambitious businessman who continues to push the limits of genetic science. To keep the park exciting and profitable, scientists conduct experimental research on dinosaur DNA, combining ancient genetic material to create entirely new species. During a routine inspection, a security lapse occurs when a system is temporarily shut down, unintentionally allowing a powerful hybrid dinosaur to break free from its enclosure. This creature, the Indominus Rex, whose name translates to Untamed King, proves far more intelligent and destructive than anticipated. As chaos spreads across the island, the park suffers a massive power failure, leaving tourists trapped while the rampaging predator stalks everything in its path. Two young brothers attempt to flee the disaster using a gyrosphere tour vehicle, only to find themselves hunted through the park by the ferocious hybrid. From that moment on, events spiral out of control as humans desperately try to survive against prehistoric giants loose in the jungle. The film delivers a highly entertaining experience filled with suspense, thrills, emotional moments, and nonstop action. Its premise, reviving ancient creatures through DNA extracted from prehistoric insects and pushing science too far, feels both familiar and freshly expanded. The chase sequences through dense jungle environments are especially gripping, with humans pursued by massive, sharp-toothed predators such as Tyrannosaurus rex and the ever-deadly velociraptors. While the dialogue remains simple and straightforward, the storyline is imaginative and fast-paced. The movie showcases an impressive lineup of dinosaurs, including carnivores like Tyrannosaurus, velociraptors, pterosaurs, and Spinosaurus, as well as towering herbivores such as Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, and Gallimimus herds racing in stampedes. A standout moment features the enormous aquatic Mosasaurus, which dramatically erupts from its enclosure, soaking spectators and devouring a shark in a visually striking sequence designed to immerse the audience. The dinosaurs themselves are the true stars of the film, terrifying, awe-inspiring, and responsible for many of the movie's most intense moments. The actors deliver energetic physical performances, particularly during the high-stakes escape scenes. The visual effects are outstanding, blending practical models with advanced computer-generated imagery to create lifelike creatures. The return of veteran dinosaur effects supervision adds authenticity, while the overall technical work feels polished and convincing. The musical score is powerful and memorable, paying homage to the franchise's iconic themes while introducing a fresh musical identity. The cinematography is vibrant and expansive, capturing both the beauty and danger of the island. Direction is confident and well-paced, balancing spectacle with storytelling. Overall, this is an above-average entry in the franchise and well worth watching. It successfully builds upon the legacy of the earlier films while updating the concept for a modern audience. The movie appeals strongly to teens and adults, though its intense violence and realistic monster attacks may be unsuitable for younger children. What's especially interesting is the film's self-aware commentary. It critiques the idea of creating bigger, deadlier attractions to boost attendance, while simultaneously using that same strategy to draw massive crowds to theaters. Judging by its record-breaking box office performance, the approach clearly worked. Revisiting a franchise like this is never easy. When a film's legacy began with a genuine sense of wonder, the bar is permanently raised. Back in the early 90s, seeing dinosaurs brought to life for the first time was nothing short of astonishing. Moments like the thundering herd sequence were jaw-dropping at the time, not just because of the technology, but because of how convincingly it all felt. That sense of awe is hard to reproduce decades later. With this newer installment, I never quite felt that same spark. While it was undeniably entertaining, it lacked the novelty that made the original so special. Much of it felt familiar, similar beats, similar chaos, just with a new group of characters filling the human roles. I wouldn't have complained if a certain chaos theory-loving mathematician had popped up to deliver one of his trademark observations, if only to bridge the old and the new a bit more. The film's headline attraction, the Indominus Rex, also didn't fully land for me. Despite all the talk of advanced genetic tinkering, spliced DNA, hybrid experimentation, and a touch of raptor DNA thrown into the mix, it ultimately didn't feel dramatically different from a classic apex predator we've already seen before. And when the climactic dinosaur battle finally arrives, the outcome feels telegraphed well in advance. Once the camera lingers on a certain aquatic enclosure, you can pretty much predict how things are going to end, and for me, that undercut the impact of the finale. Still, it's hard to stay away. No matter how many times the formula is reused, the spectacle keeps pulling you back in. If you grew up fascinated by dinosaurs, skipping one of these movies almost feels impossible, even if the franchise sometimes feels like it's improvising its way forward. The film largely delivered what I expected, but it also touched on a couple of ideas worth noting. One involves the notion of weaponizing dinosaurs, as pushed by a military-minded contractor who sees opportunity in the midst of chaos. History has shown that crises are often exploited by those in power to expand control, and the movie subtly reflects that idea. Another interesting exchange comes from the debate over creating bigger, scarier attractions. The line between innovation and monstrosity becomes blurred when ambition takes over, reminding us that playing God rarely comes without consequences. That said, the movie remains an enjoyable ride. Yes, there are moments that stretch credibility, running through danger in high heels being the most obvious, but realism has never been the selling point of this series. If you're willing to suspend disbelief, you'll probably have a good time. Looking back, the original film set a new standard for visual effects and blockbuster storytelling, much like other landmark action films of its era. The sequels that followed were more predictable, but still fun in their own way. Now, more than 2 decades later, this continuation brings us back to the same island, where a fully operational dinosaur theme park has been thriving for years. The story centers on two brothers visiting the park, eager to experience everything it has to offer, while their aunt, who manages park operations, is consumed by corporate responsibilities and the constant pressure to outdo herself with bigger attractions. Behind the scenes, scientists have engineered a powerful new hybrid dinosaur using DNA from multiple predators and even modern animals, with the exact formula kept under wraps. As expected, things don't stay under control for long. In the end, it may not recapture the magic of the original, but it delivers enough thrills, nostalgia, and large-scale chaos to justify its existence, and to make it likely that audiences will return again when the next chapter arrives. Set years after the tragedy of the original park, Jurassic World imagines a future where John Hammond's dream has finally become a reality. The island now hosts a fully functioning dinosaur theme park, complete with massive crowds, luxury attractions, and genetically engineered spectacles designed to keep visitors impressed. At the center of the operation is raptor trainer Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt, whose unique bond with a pack of velociraptors makes him both an asset and an outsider. Meanwhile, park operations manager Claire Deering is deeply invested in the business side of Jurassic World. The two share a romantic past that ended poorly, her devotion to work clashing with his laid-back, rule-bending nature. Park owner Simon Masrani, portrayed by Irfan Khan, asks Owen to assess the security of the park's newest attraction, the Indominus Rex, a genetically modified hybrid dinosaur built to be bigger, smarter, and more intimidating than anything before it. Owen immediately senses danger, warning that the creature's isolation and unknown traits make it extremely unpredictable. Complicating matters further is InGen Security Chief Vic Hoskins, Vincent D'Onofrio, who sees Owen's raptors, Blue, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, as potential military weapons. Owen pushes back, insisting that while he may be their alpha, they are not controllable tools. When the Indominus appears to escape its enclosure, chaos erupts. What initially looks like a breakout is revealed to be a calculated ambush, thanks to the creature's camouflage abilities. Owen narrowly survives the encounter, but others are killed, and the Indominus vanishes into the jungle. Attempts to capture the dinosaur fail spectacularly, forcing Claire to order a full evacuation of the island. At the same time, her nephews, Gray and Zach, ignore warnings and continue exploring in a gyrosphere, only to be attacked. They escape and eventually stumble upon the abandoned Jurassic Park Visitor Center, repairing an old Jeep to make their way back. The Indominus continues a destructive rampage, killing dinosaurs for sport, unleashing flying reptiles from the aviary, and causing massive civilian casualties. Masrani is killed during a failed aerial pursuit, while panic spreads through the park. Hoskins takes control and convinces Owen to use the raptors to hunt the hybrid. However, the plan collapses when it's revealed that the Indominus shares raptor DNA and can communicate with them, turning the pack against the soldiers. Scientist Dr. Wu escapes the island with dinosaur embryos, hinting at darker ambitions. In the final showdown, alliances shift. Owen regains the raptors' trust, and they battle the Indominus together, losing two of their own in the process. As a last resort, Claire releases the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The fight spills into the lagoon, where the Mosasaurus delivers the final blow, dragging the Indominus underwater. The survivors evacuate to Costa Rica. Gray and Zach reunite with their parents Karen, Judy Greer, and Scott Andy Buckley, while Owen and Claire decide to face the uncertain future together. The film ends on a powerful image, the T-Rex standing victorious, roaring over the ruins of the park. Supporting performances from Jake Johnson, Omar Sy, Lauren Lapkus, Brian T., and Katie McGrath help flesh out the world, with cameos by Jimmy Fallon and director Colin Trevorrow adding a fun meta touch. While the human cast performs solidly, the true stars are the dinosaurs themselves. The Indominus Rex is especially memorable, brought to life through stunning CGI. Packed with action, suspense, and a sense of awe, Jurassic World works as both a sequel and a soft reboot, a high-energy sci-fi adventure that reminds audiences why dinosaurs on the big screen are still thrilling. Jurassic World brings audiences back to the famous dinosaur island, this time with a fully operational theme park packed with tourists and new attractions. The main draw is the Indominus Rex, a lab-created hybrid stitched together from multiple species' DNA. Unsurprisingly, things go sideways when the creature escapes containment and starts treating the park like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Enter Owen Grady, Chris Pratt, a dinosaur trainer with a unique bond to velociraptors, who's tasked with helping stop the chaos before it spirals completely out of control. I still remember the sense of wonder I felt decades ago watching dinosaurs thunder across the screen in the original Jurassic Park. That magic was hard to recapture in the sequels, which relied more on scale than storytelling. Jurassic Park III tried to up the ante with bigger, meaner dinosaurs, but by then the novelty had worn thin for many viewers. To their credit, the creators waited years before reviving the franchise, allowing a new generation to discover the thrill of prehistoric mayhem. 14 years later, Jurassic World reopened its gates and absolutely dominated the box office. It's loud, glossy, and designed to impress a mass audience. Unfortunately for me, it felt overly familiar. While the park boasts shiny new features, the storyline largely retreads old ground. The plot is highly predictable, the script often ignores logic, and the overuse of CGI drains away any real tension. Add in the not-so-subtle product placement, and the experience becomes more distracting than thrilling. If the island reopens again, and the film's success makes that almost inevitable, I might just skip the ticket next time. Story-wise, the film doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel. The premise is thin, but Chris Pratt's charisma helps carry the movie, alongside some undeniably impressive dinosaur designs. The park is marketed as safer and more advanced than ever, yet that illusion crumbles quickly once the Indominus Rex proves it has no interest in following the rules. As containment fails, multiple dinosaurs are unleashed, turning the island into a full-scale disaster zone that Owen must help contain. Pratt is easily the standout, injecting charm and confidence into his role as the Raptors' handler. Sadly, the rest of the cast doesn't fare as well. The kids are more irritating than engaging, and it's hard not to wish the dinosaurs had caught up with them sooner. Irfan Khan's park owner feels far too polished to work as a convincing antagonist, while Vincent D'Onofrio at least brings some weight to his role. Visually, the film excels, but the absence of a memorable musical score and the reliance on contrived plot devices weaken its impact. Watching the movie at home on DVD, my home theater being a couch, a flat-screen TV, and a powered subwoofer, highlighted both its strengths and weaknesses. The deep bass adds some punch to the dinosaur's footsteps, but the spectacle clearly loses power on a smaller screen. Once the visual novelty fades, there's little left to pull you back in for repeat viewings. Beyond the dinosaur chaos, the film also weaves in a family subplot. Two brothers are sent to the park under the care of their aunt, Claire Bryce Dallas Howard, a high-level park manager too consumed by her job to pay much attention to them. Beneath the surface, their parents' impending divorce casts a shadow over their trip, a detail that later ties into the boys' vulnerability when the park collapses into chaos. When the hybrid dinosaur escapes, their isolation becomes far more than just emotional. It turns into a fight for survival. In the end, Jurassic World delivers flashy entertainment and a few fun moments, but it struggles to rise above being a polished repeat of what we've already seen. It's worth a watch on a rainy afternoon, especially on the biggest screen you can find, but once is probably enough. This movie follows a familiar blockbuster recipe, personal stories woven into large-scale disaster. The human drama itself isn't especially compelling, and no one is under the illusion that the film's dinosaur science has any grounding in reality. While some viewers might search for a deeper message about ambition or control, it doesn't feel like that was ever the main goal. The real entertainment comes from the spectacle, fast-paced action featuring impressively rendered dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures roaming a massive theme park that feels like a more dangerous, animal-filled version of Disney's Epcot. One of the bigger surprises is Chris Pratt, who plays Owen, a technician responsible for training a pack of velociraptors. Expectations may have been low, but he turns out to be very effective in the role, balancing charm with physical confidence. As expected, his character develops a romantic connection with Claire before the credits roll. Irfan Khan also delivers a solid performance as Masrani, the wealthy park owner whose drive for bigger and better attractions pushes the story toward chaos. The new park is built on the same island as the original Jurassic Park, and at first everything seems to be running smoothly. Trouble begins when the park unveils its latest attraction, a genetically engineered dinosaur designed to be bigger, smarter, and more lethal than anything before it. Predictably, containment fails, and the creature goes on a destructive rampage. This project had been circulating in Hollywood for years, reportedly dating back to the early 2000s, and clearly went through many changes along the way. Cast members came and went, the lead actor choice shifted dramatically, and a relatively unknown director took the helm. Instead of shrinking the budget or sending the franchise quietly to home video, as often happens by a fourth installment, the studio opted for a high-profile revival. That gamble paid off handsomely. While it doesn't quite match the impact of the original film and may fall slightly short of the second entry, it is unquestionably stronger than the third and was a massive financial success. Credit is also due for avoiding a full reboot or remake. The idea of reopening a dinosaur theme park still stretches believability, but within the film's logic, it works. Even without returning major characters like Malcolm or Grant, bringing back Dr. Wu, now portrayed with a darker edge, was a smart move that helps maintain continuity. When comparing this film to other modern blockbusters and to earlier entries in the franchise, the competition is tough. Recent monster movies and effects-driven films have raised expectations, especially in terms of CGI and storytelling. What the filmmakers aim to do here is reinvigorate the dinosaur spectacle by expanding the scale, introducing new threats, and opening the park to the public. From the moment the premise is revealed, the outcome is fairly obvious. A hybrid dinosaur escapes, chaos follows, and the trained raptors are deployed to stop it. Despite the predictability, the movie delivers plenty of tension, sharp dialogue, and humorous moments, particularly in the exchanges between Pratt's laid-back action hero and Bryce Dallas Howard's tightly wounded executive-turned-survivor. Some scenes land genuine laughs, including a memorable moment where a villain's grand speech is abruptly cut short in classic dinosaur fashion. When the action truly ramps up in the final act, the film finds its stride, offering slick direction and sustained suspense. Still, for all its strengths, it feels like it's missing that one unforgettable moment, the kind that truly elevates it from entertaining to iconic. For younger viewers, this movie might feel like pure magic. Watching it now as an adult, though, the experience didn't exactly rattle my nerves. And no, let's hold the giant turkey jokes. That's not to say it's poorly made, far from it. The action is staged with clarity and confidence, carrying that unmistakable Spielberg-style sense of geography, where you always know who's where and what's at stake. The surprises mostly land, and any excess feels intentional, leaning into the bold, shameless fun that defines the Jurassic franchise. That said, the suspense often arrives and disappears quickly. Big moments, like the T-Rex attacks, flare up fast and then move on. For me, part of this comes down to the effects. While the CGI is undeniably impressive, I still miss the tactile, physical dinosaurs from the Stan Winston era. Only once does a creature truly feel present in the frame, and even then it's during a moment where using animation would have felt awkward. This isn't to say the dinosaurs look bad. Overall, they're very cool. I never once felt that the digital nature of the creatures weakened the action. In fact, the velociraptors, especially in close-up, may be the best they've ever looked in computer-generated form. Still, it's a lingering nitpick that places the effects just below the benchmark set by Weta's work on the Apes films, and closer to what we saw in Godzilla. The human cast is filled with engaging performers. Irfan Khan steps in as a modernized version of John Hammond, this time with access to helicopters, and brings a welcome presence. Character depth varies, though. The kids largely fall into familiar molds, showing only modest growth as they bond while running for their lives. One of the stranger touches is seeing B.D. Wong return as the lone holdover from the original Jurassic Park, now portraying a morally compromised scientist. It's a bit like spotting an old villain cameo in a reboot, interesting, but slightly distracting. Overall, Jurassic World succeeds where the previous two sequels stumbled. The characters are tolerable, the distractions are minimal, and there's none of the eye-rolling nonsense that plagued earlier entries. It's an easy recommendation for a matinee, whether you're bringing kids or just indulging your inner dinosaur fan. Whether it could have been something greater is harder to say. Set years after the catastrophe on Isla Nublar, the story imagines the late John Hammond's dream finally realized, a fully operational dinosaur theme park. Crowds pour in to witness living, breathing prehistoric creatures up close. Of course, because this is meant to be a spectacle, catastrophic human mistakes ensure that the attraction goes wildly off the rails. The main threat is a genetically engineered monstrosity known as the Indominus Rex, created under the assumption that audiences have grown bored of ordinary dinosaurs. Yes, there are plenty of thinly written characters and clunky dialogue to endure in this latest franchise installment, but if your primary goal is watching enormous reptiles chase, maul, and devour people, the movie delivers exactly that. Director Colin Trevorrow, supported by a strong technical team, keeps the thrills coming fast and loud. It's not exactly a thoughtful film, it's proudly dumb fun. Many of the human characters are little more than obstacles between action scenes, and honestly, I wouldn't have minded seeing most of them become dinosaur snacks. Chris Pratt emerges relatively unscathed, playing a charismatic raptor trainer with action hero confidence. Vincent D'Onofrio, meanwhile, is stuck in a familiar role as a power-hungry schemer who sees dinosaurs as potential military assets. Unsurprisingly, the dinosaurs steal the show. Alongside the usual carnivorous chaos, we get memorable appearances from a massive aquatic mosasaur and flocks of airborne pterosaurs. The film does get a bit too sentimental when emphasizing the emotional bond between Pratt and his raptors, but by the time the finale rolls around, it goes all in on spectacle. For fans of dinosaur cinema, the ending hits a satisfying high note. In the end, the Jurassic Park franchise marches forward, not quite as a direct sequel, and not entirely a reboot either, but as a glossy reimagining of the awe and danger that defined the 1993 original. Nearly 2 decades after the devastating events that once shut the gates, those dark memories have faded for most people. The original dinosaur park has been rebuilt, expanded, and rebranded into a full-scale attraction known as a living world, drawing massive crowds eager to believe that dinosaurs truly walk the earth again. Visitors come for wonder and thrills, confident that everything is under control. To keep attendance high and excitement even higher, park owner Simon Masrani backs the creation of a brand new genetic experiment. A powerful hybrid predator known as the Indominus Rex. Money is no obstacle, but safety clearly takes a back seat. Overseeing the daily chaos is Claire, the tightly wound operations manager who runs the park at full speed while preparing for the creature's grand debut. Unfortunately for her, the same weekend brings an unexpected responsibility, hosting her estranged nephews, Gray and Zach. Left largely on their own, the boys do what curious kids do best: explore. Their curiosity quickly turns dangerous, placing them right in the path of disaster. Enter Owen, a rugged animal behavior specialist and former romantic interest of Claire's. As the park's raptor trainer, he's called in when things begin to unravel before the Indominus Rex is officially revealed. Naturally, nothing goes as planned. The new attraction proves far more intelligent and far more dangerous than anticipated. Once loose, it turns the park into a feeding ground, putting employees, visitors, and the dinosaurs themselves in immediate peril. What follows is a high-energy thrill ride packed with chaos, destruction, and survival. Jurassic World delivers exactly what it promises: explosive action, impressive visuals, and relentless pacing. The CGI is polished and immersive, and the suspense is strong enough to keep audiences locked in. It's undeniably a summer blockbuster, but whether it deserves to be the definitive summer event is open to debate. Hollywood's blockbuster season was already in full swing, yet this film arrived with massive expectations and somehow exceeded them financially. Its record-breaking box office numbers are staggering, especially for longtime fans who remember how revolutionary the original 1993 film was. That first movie redefined the genre. While Jurassic World is entertaining, it doesn't quite reach that same groundbreaking status. In many ways, the film feels like a modern echo of the original: unsupervised kids, a knowledgeable male hero, corporate greed, unreliable security systems, and a massive predator on the loose. Familiar elements return with slight variations, and there are clear nods to earlier entries in the franchise, as well as influences from other creature feature films. Still, these similarities don't ruin the experience. They simply make the movie feel comfortably familiar. The characters are serviceable, with the most interesting dynamic being the strained relationship between the boys and their aunt. If you don't overanalyze character symbolism or plot logic, the movie becomes an enjoyable spectacle focused on humanity versus nature, filled with crowd-pleasing, wow moments. Years after the original trilogy ended, the studio successfully revived the franchise by blending sequel and reboot sensibilities. While the story closely mirrors the structure of the first film, it introduces fresh ideas, new personalities, and respectful tributes to its roots. The lighter, adventure-driven tone makes it especially accessible for families and younger audiences. At its core, the concept remains compelling: a fully operational dinosaur park undone by human ambition and genetic experimentation. It may not reinvent the wheel, but it proves that there's still plenty of excitement left in this prehistoric playground. At its core, the concept closely echoes the 1993 original, only amplified to an almost over-the-top scale. Everything is bigger, louder, and more polished, sometimes to the point of feeling artificial. Even so, the opening moments, showcasing the island and its attractions, have a genuine emotional pull, reminding viewers why this universe was so captivating in the first place. That initial sense of wonder, however, is often undermined by noticeable excesses. One of the clearest examples is the aquatic dinosaur, whose exaggerated presence feels more like a visual gimmick than a narrative necessity. This lack of restraint reflects the direction, which struggles with subtlety. For a production of this scale, a more seasoned hand behind the camera might have brought greater balance. The overcrowded cast, many of them relying on familiar archetypes, slows the story down and dilutes the script's impact. Ironically, the film finds its strongest moments when it mirrors the emotional beats of the original. A key scene involving an injured dinosaur being tended to recalls an iconic moment from the classic film, but this time reframed within a darker context, where animals are hunted for sport rather than survival. This sequence, enhanced by one of the rare uses of practical effects, manages to draw a sincere emotional response, something the rest of the film only brushes against, remaining largely surface level. Most of the creatures are rendered through computer-generated imagery. While effective, these visuals lack the lasting weight of physical effects and may not age as gracefully. Where the script does succeed is in exploring the bond between humans and dinosaurs, particularly through Owen's relationship with the velociraptors. This dynamic feels far more convincing and emotionally grounded than similar attempts made in earlier installments of the franchise. The narrative also introduces the park's new owner, Simon Masrani, who carries on the legacy of the park's original visionary. Despite this inheritance, his true motivation for reopening such a dangerous attraction is never fully clarified. The filmmakers also leave several logical questions unanswered, including how previous containment failures were resolved and why the park was rebuilt on the same ill-fated island. A familiar face returns in the form of Dr. Henry Wu, whose role in the story ultimately triggers a significant shift in the plot, echoing questionable scientific ambitions from the past. Meanwhile, the antagonist, Vic Hoskins, shows an unusual respect for Owen's authority over the raptors, yet as a villain he remains underdeveloped and predictable, never truly feeling like a serious threat. Predictably, the park's peaceful facade collapses when a genetically engineered hybrid dinosaur escapes, setting off chaos and exposing plans to weaponize these creatures. Despite the high stakes, the villain's shallow characterization weakens the tension. Longtime fans are rewarded with deliberate nods to the original film, from familiar clothing and vehicles to musical cues and visual callbacks. As expected, dinosaurs remain the main attraction, though this time the iconic T-Rex takes a backseat to the new hybrid menace. The delayed reveal of this creature builds suspense effectively, and the special effects team makes excellent use of the lush Hawaiian landscapes standing in for the fictional island. Through repeated exposition, the hybrid dinosaur is given a psychological edge, to the point where it becomes the most compelling character in the film. Other standout moments include the impressive mosasaur, respectful tributes to classic herbivores, and airborne dinosaurs that drive some of the movie's most intense sequences. In the end, while nostalgia and spectacle keep the experience entertaining, the film often sacrifices depth and nuance in favor of scale, leaving flashes of emotional brilliance surrounded by a largely superficial narrative. This film centers on the chaos unleashed by Indominus Rex, a genetically engineered hybrid that turns violently on humans when provoked or deprived, while Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt, leads a trained pack of velociraptors into what becomes a decisive hunt. One of the movie's strongest elements is the bond between Owen and Blue, the most prominent raptor. Their relationship is carefully built, making it easy to emotionally invest in their dynamic. Turning former threats into uneasy allies is a surprisingly bold and clever choice that the franchise hadn't attempted before. That said, the script, clearly the product of too many creative hands, often stumbles. Logical gaps, tonal whiplash, and inconsistent character use result in a film that feels scattered and occasionally foolish. Characters vanish when they're no longer useful, the mood shifts abruptly, and narrative threads compete rather than complement each other. The story leans heavily on the idea that modern audiences demand more than dinosaurs alone. As a result, the park's reopening is paired with scientists pushing boundaries by creating a brand new hybrid creature, an experiment that is obviously reckless, yet framed as innovation. Predictability dominates much of the runtime, though the final act tries to compensate with constant twists. Some of these turns are engaging, others feel forced, but none fully justify the narrative detours taken to reach them. There's also a clear issue of overcrowding. With so many characters and subplots, the story struggles to move forward. The first act, in particular, gets lost in showcasing park attractions, clumsy romantic elements, heavy-handed exposition, and slow-burn threats that fail to generate sustained tension. Dialogue frequently drifts into commentary on animal rights, corporate greed, ownership, and the emotional capacity of dinosaurs. While these themes could have been compelling, they ring hollow given the film's relentless merchandising and branding, creating an unavoidable sense of contradiction. As an executive producer, Steven Spielberg seems intent on reinforcing the dominance of CGI over practical effects. Naturally, expectations for visual effects were high, more than 2 decades have passed since the original films reshaped cinema. While animatronics are still used sparingly for close-ups and remain effective, the heavy reliance on computer-generated imagery allows for more dinosaurs at the expense of believability. The creatures often feel artificial, likely because of their extended screen time. Earlier entries relied far more on suspense, performances, and iconic music to generate tension. Even with impressive set design, the overuse of CGI here diminishes realism. The most emotionally powerful moment involving a dying Apatosaurus works precisely because it uses traditional animatronics, proof that older techniques still carry weight. Visually, the park itself is impressive. Unlike the rugged, untamed atmosphere of the original film, this version embraces sleek futurism. The contrast between advanced technology and prehistoric life is intriguing, but it also shifts focus away from the dinosaurs. When the park is revealed, architecture and infrastructure dominate the frame, making the location the main attraction rather than the creatures within it. Ultimately, Jurassic World doesn't significantly evolve its critique of humanity's desire to control nature, play God, or monetize living beings. Its condemnation of profit-driven spectacle feels disingenuous, especially given the franchise's real-world ties to theme parks and global branding. The film warns against exploitation while simultaneously embodying it, leaving the audience with a lingering sense of irony. Even with its flaws, Jurassic World manages to be an enjoyable ride. From Michael Giacchino's sweeping, nostalgic score to the wide-eyed curiosity embodied by young Gray, who, while not the main character, represents the audience's sense of wonder. The film frequently hints at Steven Spielberg's lingering influence over this revived dinosaur park. There's a breezy, adventure-driven spirit here, closer in feel to Jurassic Park III, and director Colin Trevorrow does his best to deliver a solid summer spectacle that mostly lives up to expectations. Trevorrow, previously known for the indie gem Safety Not Guaranteed, clearly outperforms the misfiring Jurassic Park III era with this glossy reboot. That said, the original Jurassic Park already explored much of the same theme park gone wrong territory far more effectively decades earlier. While Jurassic World boasts an appealing cast and lush tropical settings, it rarely generates genuine tension. Much of the danger feels routine, especially when it revolves around endangered kids who are obviously going to survive. For viewers unfamiliar with the earlier films, or younger audiences impressed by modern 3D and slick visuals, this entry may feel thrilling. For everyone else, it can seem like a retread with polish. The film openly acknowledges its own creative dilemma early on. Audiences are no longer dazzled by dinosaurs alone. Bigger, louder, and more ferocious creatures are demanded. Enter the genetically engineered Indominus Rex, a towering hybrid meant to rekindle fear. Ironically, despite its size and supposed menace, the creature never truly feels overwhelming. Compared to other modern movie monsters, it lacks weight and intimidation, resembling more of a supersized attraction than a nightmare. There's also a sense that Jurassic World exists partly to fuel merchandising. The dinosaurs often look overly clean and artificial, missing the gritty realism that made the creatures in the earlier films, particularly the raptors, feel genuinely dangerous. While the original franchise once set the gold standard for CGI, that technological edge has long since faded, and newer monster films have raised expectations well beyond what's shown here. The screenplay, penned by a team with a strong resume, unfortunately feels undercooked this time. Plot logic collapses under scrutiny, action scenes stretch credibility, and many characters behave foolishly simply to keep the story moving. Bryce Dallas Howard's character spends much of the film sprinting through jungles and concrete corridors in impractical high heels, while Chris Pratt's supposedly seasoned ex-military figure makes questionable tactical choices and carries underpowered weaponry for the threats he faces. The security forces fare no better, missing easy shots with heavy firepower in ways that feel more comical than suspenseful. Lacking corrupt lawyers or rogue scientists as primary antagonists, the film substitutes a militaristic villain obsessed with weaponizing dinosaurs for combat. Predictably, this plan unravels. Throughout it all, the movie maintains a sanitized, family-friendly tone. Despite frequent dinosaur attacks, visible blood is almost non-existent, and the endangered children escape without so much as a serious injury. In the end, Jurassic World is a slick, safe, and sometimes fun blockbuster that rarely takes risks. It entertains, especially for younger viewers, but it never quite recaptures the awe, danger, or innovation that made the original film a classic. One of the biggest problems with this film is that real danger never seems to land where it counts. The only characters who suffer serious injuries are nameless extras, which drains the story of any real suspense. With no meaningful stakes, tension becomes more of a suggestion than an experience. More than 2 decades ago, the original dinosaur park concept was introduced. A wealthy visionary dreamed of bringing prehistoric creatures back to life on a secluded island. At first, the idea appeared brilliant, until nature predictably pushed back. Carnivorous dinosaurs broke free, and chaos followed. Fast forward 20 years, and the park has been reborn under new ownership. A charismatic billionaire has revived the concept, fully committed to honoring the original vision while modernizing it for today's thrill-hungry crowds. His goal is simple: keep the dinosaurs healthy and the guests amazed. Standing in contrast is the park's tightly wound operations manager, whose focus is less on wonder and more on the bottom line. For her, success means constant growth, which requires flashier attractions to keep attendance high. That pressure leads to the creation of a brand new genetically engineered dinosaur, designed in secrecy by a brilliant but guarded scientist who refuses to fully explain what he's made. Naturally, that lack of transparency proves disastrous. The result is a hyper-intelligent apex predator that outsmarts nearly everyone. Even the park's resident animal behavior expert, an adventurous, wisecracking trainer with a questionable emotional bond to his velociraptors, underestimates the threat. His attempt to use trained raptors as tracking tools is ridiculous, though admittedly entertaining, and their supposed connection feels more convenient than believable. When the monster breaks loose, it doesn't just hunt. It dismantles containment systems, slaughters other dinosaurs, and unleashes airborne predators by crashing through the aviary. Before taking on this massive franchise, the director had a modest resume, best known for a small, clever indie comedy built on character rather than spectacle. That earlier film showed warmth and originality, which reportedly impressed studio executives enough to hand him the keys to this blockbuster revival. Unfortunately, that personal touch doesn't translate well here. For families, the movie works as loud, colorful entertainment and may even spark an interest in dinosaurs for younger viewers. For adults, though, it feels safe to the point of blandness. Despite its scale and noise, the film rarely surprises. It's a polished but routine ride that promises excitement yet rarely delivers true thrills, proof that in this case, suspense is very much not guaranteed. And really, will fictional scientists ever learn? After multiple catastrophic failures involving resurrected reptiles, someone still thought it was smart to reopen a dinosaur theme park, essentially turning it into a prehistoric version of a marine attraction. Audiences within the film, much like those outside it, have grown bored with ordinary dinosaurs, demanding something bigger, scarier, and more extreme. So geneticists do what they do best: combine the most dangerous traits into a single unstoppable creature. Once it inevitably escapes, events unfold exactly as expected. After getting over the mild disappointment that no major characters suffer serious consequences, it becomes easier to accept the film for what it is: a spirited but shallow attempt to recapture the awe of the original 1990s classic. You remember that one, the ancient artifact from the distant past, when movies apparently required imagination instead of constant upgrades. Of course, we needed a reboot. After all, expecting people to simply rewatch the original would be asking far too much. This entry in the Jurassic franchise delivers plenty of spectacle and ambition, and on a surface level, it's often entertaining. The problem is that, despite all the noise and visual polish, it never quite captures the spark that made the original film so unforgettable. Everything looks expensive and carefully assembled, yet the movie feels oddly hollow, like a technically impressive attraction that forgets to inspire real wonder. The production is sleek and modern, but it lacks the visual soul and tactile realism that define the 1993 classic. Ironically, the older film's effects still feel more convincing and alive than much of what's presented here. That difference highlights something else missing: a strong directorial voice. Steven Spielberg's gift for staging action with clarity, tension, and emotion becomes especially obvious when others attempt to replicate his style without fully understanding it. Chris Pratt returns in a leading role, but once again he doesn't quite sell the character he's meant to embody. He has charm, but not the specific kind this role demands. Where other films required a scruffy rogue edge, this one calls for rugged competence, and he never fully gets there. The performance leans more toward polished, cool guy than believable survivor, and it's hard to shake the sense that the movie wants an Indiana Jones type, but settles for something closer to a frat house action hero. One sequence truly stands out: a chaotic aerial attack involving flying dinosaurs descending on park guests. It's tense, memorable, and creatively staged. Unfortunately, very little else leaves a lasting impression, blurring together into a series of loud but forgettable moments. For audiences who grew up with the original Jurassic Park, comparisons are unavoidable. That first film delivered not just scale, but the iconic score, the breathtaking reveal of dinosaurs in the wild, the quiet suspense, and the sense that movie-egoing itself had been transformed. This newer installment offers size and volume, but little genuine emotion or novelty. Set roughly 20 years after the failed park experiment, the story centers on a fully operational dinosaur theme park, struggling to stay exciting in a world that's grown numb to spectacle. Bryce Dallas Howard plays the corporate executive tasked with keeping the attraction profitable, while Chris Pratt works closely with trained raptors. Behind the scenes, genetic experimentation leads to a new hybrid predator designed to reignite public interest, with predictably disastrous consequences. Though framed as a sequel, the film frequently echoes the structure and moments of the original, almost daring viewers to spot the references. Some of these nods are fun and respectful, particularly visual callbacks that honor legendary figures in special effects history. Still, nostalgia can only carry things so far. The subplot involving the militarization of dinosaurs follows a familiar blockbuster formula, with a villainous presence that feels more functional than inspired. The obligatory kids in danger storyline is serviceable but unremarkable. Bryce Dallas Howard's character, often criticized for her extended running scenes in impractical footwear, comes across as exaggerated not just in those moments, but in tone overall. The performance feels heightened in a way that clashes with the film's supposed realism. Supporting characters played by Jake Johnson and Omar Sy provide the most grounded human moments, but they're underused and never given enough space to shine. Much of this review inevitably measures the film against its legendary predecessor. That comparison may be unfair, but it's also unavoidable. Viewers too young to remember the original, or those seeing this franchise for the first time, will likely find the movie thrilling and even frightening in places. Certain creatures, especially the massive aquatic dinosaur, deliver jaw-dropping moments and lingering chills. For longtime fans, though, uneven CGI and cartoonish characterization are harder to ignore. The music does help bridge the gap. The new composer smartly weaves in the classic theme, reminding us of what this series once represented. In the end, the film succeeds as a loud, expensive ride, but not as a meaningful evolution of a cinematic landmark. It's big, polished, and occasionally fun, yet rarely magical. If you came for dinosaurs, you'll get them. If you came for wonder, you may leave wanting more. Despite its flaws, nothing here is likely to scare off devoted fans, and there's a whole new generation that deserves to experience realistic, roaring dinosaurs on a massive screen. Director Colin Trevorrow, previously known for the small-scale sci-fi comedy Safety, Not Guaranteed, clearly understands the appeal of the franchise and leans into it with enthusiasm. This fourth entry in the series, and clearly not the final one, has been praised by many as the strongest sequel since the original. Some have even gone so far as to claim it rivals the first film, which feels like a stretch. While entertaining, this movie doesn't truly bring anything new to the table. Instead, it rearranges familiar ideas established by earlier installments, especially the 1993 classic. The original Jurassic Park became iconic because it balanced suspense, wonder, humor, and character. This film doesn't quite hit that same sweet spot. It's a well-made crowd pleaser and arguably the best sequel so far, though I personally enjoyed the third movie more than most viewers did. The cast is serviceable and mostly likable. Chris Pratt brings charm and confidence to his role, while Bryce Dallas Howard does solid work as a tightly wound corporate manager. The two young brothers at the center of the story, however, fail to leave much of an impression, and Vincent D'Onofrio's antagonist feels pulled straight from a villain cliché handbook. The screenplay delivers steady humor and plenty of winks to the original film, sometimes to its benefit and sometimes to its detriment. Michael Giacchino's musical score is energetic and dramatic, though it occasionally strains to echo the legendary themes composed by John Williams, which is a nearly impossible bar to meet. Of course, the main attraction here is the dinosaur action, and in that department the movie delivers. Alongside familiar prehistoric stars, we get a genetically engineered super predator and a clever use of fan-favorite velociraptors. The visual effects are impressive, and the final showdown is loud, chaotic, and undeniably fun. If you sit down expecting a straightforward thrill ride, you'll probably have a great time. If you're hoping to feel the same sense of awe the original film inspired, you may walk away a bit disappointed. It's enjoyable, but it rarely surprises. I was curious about Jurassic World for a few reasons. I'm a sucker for dinosaurs. I enjoy island-set adventure stories, and it ranks among the highest-grossing films of all time. I expected it to match or even surpass the first movie, which, despite its legendary status, I've always found slightly overrated due to thin character development. While the dinosaur sequences in that film were unforgettable, much of the surrounding story felt average, even with strong performances from Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, and Ariana Richards. Still, I'd give the original a respectable 7 out of 10. The second and third films were decent but largely forgettable, making this long-delayed fourth installment, released 14 years later, feel like a fresh opportunity. While it improves on its immediate predecessors, it doesn't top the original. The story largely retreads familiar ground, with the main twist being that the once-failed park is now a fully operational, theme park-style attraction. Run by corporate interests and designed to satisfy modern audiences, the park itself mirrors the movie's biggest issue: spectacle over substance. Most of the supporting characters are thinly sketched, and while a few performances stand out, the emotional core never fully develops. Ultimately, it's an entertaining blockbuster that knows exactly what it is and what it isn't: fun, flashy, and loud, but not quite timeless. 20 years after the catastrophe that shut down Jurassic Park, the company founded by the late John Hammond finally believes it has cracked the code. Dinosaurs are no longer a failed experiment. They're now the centerpiece of a fully functioning, high-tech theme park. Everything appears under control, right up until it isn't. That's when Jurassic World reminds us why playing God never ends well. Honestly, if these people had watched Westworld, none of this would have come as a shock. Claire, the tightly wound operations manager, is meant to be supervising her visiting nephews, but instead finds herself clashing with Owen, a laid-back velociraptor handler who actually understands the animals. Meanwhile, Security Chief Hoskins is busy pushing his own questionable agenda, which becomes increasingly dangerous once the park's newest genetic creation, an engineered superpredator, breaks loose. The Indominus Rex, unsurprisingly, does whatever it wants and doesn't care about corporate plans or human arrogance. There are moments where the film could have leaned more into character drama. My wife agreed with me on this, so I know it's not just a personal nitpick. The writers really missed an opportunity to include the older brother's girlfriend, or at least introduce another human subplot, maybe someone at the park, to add tension and variety. Still, several sequences absolutely work. The aerial dinosaur attack on tourists is gripping, the reveal surrounding the Indominus is handled well, and the climactic showdown delivers exactly what fans came for. Looking back at the franchise as a whole, the original Jurassic Park was revolutionary. Those dinosaurs felt real in a way no one had seen before. It may take its time getting started, but it earned that build-up. The second film upped the chaos with more creatures and more danger, while the third never fully clicked for me. This fourth installment, however, hits the ground running and never eases off. Unlike some action-heavy blockbusters that feel hollow, this one actually juggles multiple storylines that weave together effectively. There's spectacle, sure, but there's also a plot holding it all together. The action is relentless, well-paced, and consistently believable. The final act in particular is a thrill ride, and easily one of the most exciting sequences the series has ever produced. Jurassic World was the only entry in the franchise I managed to see in theaters when it originally released, and I loved it then. Rewatching it now, I can confidently say it still holds up, even if it isn't perfect. On the positive side, the movie successfully updates the original concept for a modern blockbuster audience. The dinosaurs are bigger, meaner, and more plentiful, bringing a wide range of prehistoric chaos to the screen. The cast works well as an ensemble, but the real standout is the leading man, whose natural charm carries nearly every scene he's in. His chemistry with the park's operations manager, and even with the raptors themselves, is a highlight. The Indominus Rex is a genuinely intimidating threat, and the human villain chews the scenery in a way that's both entertaining and easy to root against. The musical score deserves special praise. Every time it swells, it adds momentum and excitement, perfectly complementing the action. The dinosaur set pieces are varied and spectacular, but the final battle, pitting the park's most iconic predator alongside unlikely allies against the new monster, is hands down the best dinosaur combat the franchise has ever delivered. That said, the movie isn't without flaws. Creating the Indominus Rex feels incredibly short-sighted when the park already has an entire zoo of awe-inspiring creatures. This decision exists solely to satisfy profit-hungry stakeholders, and it shows. It's also frustrating to see characters ignore established facts about dinosaur intelligence, especially when that oversight directly leads to disaster. Some character choices are so dumb you're practically begging for the dinosaurs to intervene. Even with all that, Jurassic World succeeds as a triumphant revival of the franchise. Yes, plenty of questionable decisions happen, but the fun outweighs the frustration. At the end of the day, it's a loud, thrilling reminder of why people fell in love with this series in the first place. And let's be honest, there was never any real doubt about the financial success. This reboot sequel continuation was designed to print money. The audience was already lined up, wallets in hand, ready to push the film toward that now all too common billion-dollar milestone. It's a movie where the product clearly comes before the art, but sometimes the product still delivers a hell of a ride. No one involved down to the CGI filler artist had any reservations about how this picture would be consumed. So the creative process from the idea to script to finished film was never in danger of being a loser, and that is hardly an inspiration for the imagination. That's exactly what this film became and is, a prefabricated movie with just the required amount of effort and voila, let's all go to the bank. There's something to be said about the struggling artist. The movie is mediocre, considering passable popcorn entertainment. The 3D does its job, the sound system strains to impress, the CGI is expensively slick, the characters and the actors delivering the one-dimensional people to the screen are the least impressive of the package. The story is lame, considering, and seems trite, recycled, and frankly quite dull. The new hybrid dino is unimpressive, and you have to look closely to differentiate the T-Rex. The Raptors as trained military might is hardly anything surprising, and in the end, handled awkwardly. Overall, this is an okay film and it delivers, somewhat, the stuff it is selling. A minor disappointment because the true wonder of the first series, just like the story here, is old hat. The joke going around when the first film was released, you can't tell the fake dinosaurs from the real ones. It's a joke that wouldn't work today, but reflects how impressive the prototype was but no longer is. One thing that would be 100% guaranteed prior to the release of Jurassic World is that whatever the quality, or lack of, the notices would be mixed. Thus the reactions would be akin to those that Indiana Jones 4 received, charges of ruining childhoods and franchises etc. Jurassic World does exactly what is expected of it. It's a popcorn blockbuster that plays out as mindless fun, complete with outstanding effects, monster mayhem, and moments of dumbness. In fact, it's very much a safe sequel, reverting to the original formula without the classy edges of Spielberg's deft touch. There's a likable cast fronting up the pick, with Chris Pratt as the hero carrying some oldie adventure chops about him, and Bryce Dallas Howard, her natural beauty sparkling on Blu-ray, a fun femme sidekick. The writers introduce a couple of new mighty monsters to the series, hell of beasties for sure, while the photography, stunt work, and musical score all impress greatly. The Velociraptor plotline is crummy and daft, almost as daft as Bryce's high heels character arc, and the familiarity factor does grate a little at times, but it's a rollicking good time not to be taken remotely seriously like it's some sort of series disgrace. Scientists and corporate companies never learn, do they? Surely Universal Studios can't be so short of money that they need to resurrect a franchise that finished 15 years ago. That said, dinosaurs have an absolute fascination to humans in general and children in particular, and I used to love these dinosaur movies courtesy of Ray Harryhausen, and who can forget the classic Doctor Who's story Invasion of the Dinosaurs, where the population of London has to get evacuated due to the sudden appearance of papier-mâché reptiles. In short, you can't go wrong with dinosaurs if you're after mass commercial appeal. Despite the dangers of flogging a dead horse, Universal are probably playing things a bit safe by bringing out another franchise film, and play it safe they do. There's not a lot of originality on display here, and much of the first half plays out as you might expect it. These greedy corporate capitalists have changed the balance of nature by opening a theme park featuring animals that died out tens of millions of years ago. And worse than that, they've modified the dinosaurs, so that not only do you think you're watching a retread of the original Jurassic Park movies, complete with the same musical soundtrack, you're also watching a reworking of the company from the Alien movies. This is also reflected in the rather one-note, thin characters who populate the story. At this point, you might start worrying Universal fleeced out of the price of a cinema ticket, and you're getting more of the same that you got with the first 3 films, but the saving grace here is just how nasty things get. My problem with the second JP is once the action switches to mainland America, there's not much in the way of a high body count. This is certainly not a problem here, and director Colin Trevorrow knows what the audience wants and gives it to them by the bucket load, as numerous faceless red shirt types suffer all sorts of spectacular deaths. It might sound a little bit mean, but I was surprised as to how enjoyable the action scenes were. Spectacular deaths and dinosaurs, what more do you want from a blockbuster?